In 1908, a young reporter by the name of Napoleon Hill had the rare privilege of interviewing the wealthiest man in America, Andrew Carnegie.
Mr. Carnegie delivered a lecture that I shall never forget. Let me call your attention to a great power which is under your control, a power which is greater than poverty, greater than the lack of education, greater than all of your fears and superstitions combined.
During the interview, Carnegie revealed something he'd never spoken about before, the secret behind his astounding wealth.
Then Mr. Carnegie continued his speech with a description of a great universal truth which made such an impact upon my mind that I began then and there to give myself a new outlook on life.
And so Napoleon Hill began his life's work. For the next 25 years, he set out on a quest to interview the wealthiest, most famous, most successful men of his time and distill their knowledge into an integrated philosophy, a science of success.
If I've had the privilege of knowing intimately the most outstanding and the most successful and the richest men that this country has ever produced.
What Hill found was something marvelously simple and yet profound beyond description.
A man is not bound by instinct. He's bound only by the imagination and the willpower of his own mind.
Millions of people believe their wealth and success are beyond their control, that it's tied to circumstance, education, talent, skill, or luck. But history tells a different story. Every great achievement, every fortune, and every empire ever built started first as a thought, because thoughts are more than just fleeting ideas. They are things that, when charged with desire, faith, and persistence, become unstoppable forces with the power to affect the material world. And so the mind becomes a factory. It produces what it focuses on, what it believes in.
Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve.
This is not a metaphor, it's a principle as real as gravity. Because wealth does not begin with money, it begins with a state of mind. This is the secret Andrew Carnegie whispered to Napoleon Hill more than 100 years ago. That secret is here, hidden within each of the 13 principles of success, ready to reveal itself to those who are willing to hear it. As a young man, Edwin C. Barnes became fixated on a single objective: to become business partners with the great Thomas Edison. To most, he was delusional. Barnes did not know Edison. He was not an engineer. He had no experience, no connections. They didn't live in the same city, and he could not even afford a train ticket. By every logical measure, Barnes and Edison did not inhabit the same universe, but his obsession was so vivid, so real in his mind, that he believed Edison was already his business partner. When he finally got to New York, Barnes did not ask for a job. He declared his intention, and Edison, who had built his own life on the impossible, saw something in Barnes's eyes: conviction. So he gave him a chance, a small, insignificant role. Years passed and the world called Barnes a fool, but one day Edison had created a new dictation machine and his salesmen dismissed it as a failure, unsellable. They gave up, but Barnes saw opportunity. He seized his moment and made it his life's only priority to sell as many of those machines as humanly possible, and he did. It was a massive success, and soon enough, Edison came to see what Barnes had known all along. He granted him the exclusive right to sell his inventions. They were partners, and both became rich beyond their wildest dreams. There comes a moment in every person's life when they stand at a crossroads. One path is comfortable and ordinary, the other is uncertain, risky, and brimming with potential. To actualize the potential, we need the first principle of success, a burning desire. With desire, a man with no money, no status, and no connections can step into the office of the world's greatest inventor and declare his destiny. With desire, that man can suffer years in silence and recognize an opportunity when it comes knocking. Not a wish, not a dream, but a burning, obsessive desire that is focused, structured, and applied. Define exactly what you want. Define what you're willing to sacrifice for it. Define a concrete plan and start immediately. Make this goal your overwhelming obsession. See it, live it, breathe it, because the mind attracts what it focuses on, and what you obsess over, you create. On a cold December 12, 1900, John Pierpont Morgan and 80 of the wealthiest men in America gathered in New York. Standing before them was Charles M. Schwab. He was not a banker and not an industrialist. He was a regular steelworker, but he had something much more powerful than money. That night, Schwab spoke of an empire, a steel business so massive, so efficient that it would dominate the world. He painted a picture so vivid that Morgan could see it, feel it, believe in it as if it already existed. Because to Schwab, it did. By the end, Morgan pulled him aside. They talked for hours until Morgan made a decision. If Schwab could convince Andrew Carnegie, the steel king, to sell his business, Morgan would build the greatest steel company the world had ever seen. A week later, Schwab met with Carnegie, and again he described this steel empire in such undeniable detail that he saw it too. By the end of the conversation, Carnegie named his price, $400 million. With a few strokes of a pen, US Steel was born, the first company to be worth over $1 billion, and at its helm was Schwab. This is the power of the second principle of success, faith.
For a great number of years, it was a mystery to me as to why my prayers failed more often than they succeeded. I discovered that I was in the habit of going to prayer only when I was in difficulty. Later on, I learned that the best way to go to prayer is to condition the mind long before an emergency arises by expressing thanks and gratitude for the blessings you already had.
Faith is not something you wait for, it is something you create. Speak your goals into existence, see yourself winning, and eliminate all doubt. If you tell yourself you are destined for failure, your mind will make it so. If you tell yourself you are destined for success, your mind will make it so. You will believe whatever you tell yourself, whether true or false. This is not magic, this is how the mind works.
You know, nature has a way of seeing to it that that which you expect comes along. She doesn't want to disappoint. If you expect failure, if you expect defeat, if you expect ill health, the chances are that you'll not be disappointed. But if you expect success, which is far better, the chances are also that you'll not be disappointed.
In the early 1900s, a struggling salesman sat alone in his room, staring at a sheet of paper where he'd written a simple statement: "I will earn $50,000 within the next 5 years." At the time, he had no idea how, but every morning and every night, he spoke these words aloud. He saw himself receiving the money. He felt its weight in his hands. He imagined the life he would live once he had it. At first, it felt silly, but over time, something changed. The salesman's words started feeling true. His subconscious mind, unable to tell the difference between reality and suggestion, began shaping his actions, his decisions, and his habits. He started noticing opportunities he never would have seen before. 5 years later, he looked at his bank balance and saw $50,000. This is the power of autosuggestion, the third principle of success.
When you speak of your poverty and lack of education, you are simply directing your mind power to attract these undesirable circumstances, because it is true that whatever your mind feeds upon, your mind attracts to you. All success begins with definiteness of purpose, with a clear picture in your mind of precisely what you want from life.
Your mind is alive. Whatever thoughts dominate it, whether positive or negative, it will accept, believe, and act upon. Autosuggestion is the mechanism that programs desire and faith into the subconscious. Millions of people unknowingly program themselves for failure, and so the subconscious delivers failure, struggle, and misfortune. But just as the mind can be programmed for poverty, it can be programmed for wealth. Write down your goal, Be specific and speak it out loud, but remember that words alone are meaningless. You must see it, feel it, believe it. At first, it will feel fake, but persistence will turn belief into change.
There's no end to the daydreaming you do. And it's far better to daydream about the money you're going to have than it is to fear the poverty that you know you already have. I'll assure you, this is no virtue and no benefit in sitting down and bemoaning the fact that you are poverty-stricken or that you need money and you don't know how to get it. I honestly believe that there isn't anything in this world that I need that money can buy or that anything else can buy that I can't get if I want it. I don't think in terms of what I can't get, I think in terms of what I can get. And I've been doing that for a long time, and it's a wonderful thing with which to condition your mind to be positive.
In the early 1900s, Henry Ford sued a Chicago newspaper that called him an ignorant pacifist, and Ford had sued for libel. The newspaper's attorneys saw this as their chance to humiliate him, to prove to the world that Ford, one of the richest men alive, was nothing more than an uneducated fool. And so, they bombarded him with trivial questions about history, science, and politics. But instead of playing their game, Ford gave a response that silenced the room. If I should really want to know the answer to the foolish question you have just asked, let me remind you that I have a row of electric push buttons on my desk, and by pushing the right button, I can summon to my aid men who can answer any question I desire to ask. Then he said, "Now, will you kindly tell me why I should clutter up my mind with general knowledge when I have men around me who can supply any knowledge I require?" Ford understood perfectly the fourth principle of success: specialized knowledge. A professor might know everything about history, physics, or economics, yet struggle to pay his bills. Meanwhile, a man like Henry Ford, who never finished school, became one of the richest men in history. Ford didn't try to know everything. He focused on knowing what mattered, and then surrounded himself with those who knew the rest.
Someone has said that knowledge is power. That is only a half-truth, for knowledge becomes power only when it is put into action for the attainment of a definite objective.
If you want success, you must acquire knowledge that is specific to your goal. Decide what knowledge will make you successful, surround yourself with experts, and apply what you learn. In the late 1800s, a young pharmacist named Asa Candler stood behind the counter of a small drugstore when an old country doctor approached him with a strange offer. The doctor placed an old brass kettle on the counter, along with a small slip of paper. It contained a secret formula he'd been using to make a peculiar fizzy drink. To the doctor, it was just another medicinal tonic, but Candler saw more than a simple drink. He pictured elegant bottles lining shelves, a name painted on the sides of buildings, and people laughing together with a glass of his product in their hands. Without hesitation, Candler handed over $500, his entire life savings, for a piece of paper. But he wasn't just buying a formula, he was buying into his own idea, and it eventually became Coca-Cola, one of the most valuable brands in history, a global phenomenon, and a testament to the fifth principle of success: imagination.
A man is not bound by instinct. He's bound only by the imagination and the willpower of his own mind.
Ideas are the source of every fortune. Most people wait for the perfect opportunity, the spark of pure invention. But old ideas can be reimagined into something new and creative. Henry Ford did not invent the car, he imagined how to mass produce it. Steve Jobs didn't invent the smartphone, he invented a world where a phone was a pocket-sized computer. Asa Candler did not invent Coca-Cola, but he imagined it. To create wealth, you do not need more resources, you need more imagination. Because in the end, your success is only limited by what you can dream. At the heart of every great fortune and behind every great achievement is a plan, a definite, organized set of actions that turns a vague ambition into a reality. Organized planning, the sixth principle of success, is the bridge between imagination and achievement. Without it, dreams remain dreams. Millions of people go through life feeling stuck, watching others succeed, wondering what do they have that I don't. It's not luck, not raw intelligence, talent, or even education. It's a definite plan and the persistence to see it through. Ideas really are a dime a dozen. Most people fail not because they don't have a good idea, but because when their first plan to execute it fails, they give up. They assume the idea is the problem, when in reality it was the plan. Those who succeed, they adapt, refine, and try again. Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times before perfecting the light bulb. He refused to quit until he found a solution. Everyone wants to have money, but they never take the time to plan how to get it, and then improve upon their plan until it works. Success doesn't come to the smartest, the luckiest, or even the hardest working. It comes to those who plan ahead, who fail, and who never quit. On the 4th of July 1776, 56 men gathered in the Pennsylvania State House staring at a document. But it was not just any document. This was the Declaration of Independence, an open challenge to the most powerful empire on Earth. Signing it was not just an act of defiance, it was a death sentence if they failed. The full force of the British Crown would come down on them, and they would be hanged as traitors. And yet, the choice was clear. One by one, the men signed their names on the paper, knowing there was no turning back. Their decision was final. But now the Americans were no longer just rebelling. They were fighting for their fundamental rights as human beings. Their revolution was a desperate bid to win their freedom or die trying. And that is precisely why it worked. The story of America's birth is a textbook case of the 7th principle of success: decision. Every person makes choices, some safe, others definitive, absolute, and irreversible. Success demands that you take the second path, that you refuse to hesitate, that you decide. Not the man who hopes he'll get there, not the man who keeps one foot in the water and one foot in the sand, but the man who is so fully committed to his vision that failure is not an option. Because the man who decides, who truly decides, creates his own certainty. Most people never reach success, not because they lack ability, but because they lack the courage to claim it. Every great achievement begins with a decision that cannot be undone. Choose your destiny, stake your life on it, and never look back. For years, Thomas Edison had been consumed by a single goal: to create a reliable, practical, and long-lasting incandescent light. But time after time, he failed. Some of his lights burned too quickly, others weren't bright enough, some simply didn't conduct electricity well. Somehow or another, every test failed. Not once, not 10 times or 100, but over 10,000 times. Scientists insisted it was impossible. Even Edison's own employees urged him to quit. But he saw things differently. Each failure wasn't a setback, it was a lesson. He didn't see 10,000 failed experiments, he saw 10,000 necessary steps toward the ultimate solution. After each failed attempt, he improved his process, adjusted voltages, and refined his materials, until years later, one of his lights glowed. And it didn't burn out. It shined for days. Edison's struggle had finally paid off. The incandescent light made him a fortune and changed the world forever. But it only existed because Edison mastered the 8th principle of success: persistence.
When failure overtakes you, start thinking of it as if it had been a success. Start imaging the circumstances of the failure in your own imagination as being a success. Start also looking for the seed of an equivalent benefit which seems comes with every failure.
There is no substitute for persistence. It is the unseen force that transforms struggle into mastery, setbacks into stepping stones, and defeat into victory. Millions of people fail because they think failure is final. It is just a part of the process. The road to success is paved with mistakes, setbacks, and miscalculations. These are not failures. With persistence, you may extract the lesson from every apparent failure and redirect yourself towards success. Decide what you want and do not be afraid to fail. Make failure your teacher and pursue your destiny with unwavering persistence. The only way to fail is to stop. The greatest achievers in history understood a fundamental truth. A single mind is limited, but a group of minds working in harmony creates something greater than the sum of its parts. Carnegie didn't build his steel empire alone. Ford wasn't the sole architect of the automobile industry. Even Edison, the great inventor, surrounded himself with brilliant engineers. But what they tapped into wasn't mere collaboration. It was something more powerful, more elusive, and more mystical. This is the 9th principle of success, the power of the mastermind. When two people work together toward a common objective, something fascinating happens. A third intelligence is created, a mastermind. This shared consciousness is a force that elevates both individuals beyond what they could achieve alone. It's the reason why ideas sharpen in deep conversation, why great partnerships spark breakthroughs, why a movement can emerge from the alignment of just a few people. You do not need to be the smartest person in the room, but you must be in the right room. The mastermind only works if the relationship is built on harmony, if each person is committed to the same definite purpose. Surround yourself with procrastinators, doubters, and cowards, and you will begin to think and act like them. Surround yourself with bold, decisive, and relentless people, and you will rise together. Your environment dictates your success, so build a movement, cultivate your mastermind, and step into a level of power you never imagined possible. Throughout history, the greatest minds, Napoleon, Edison, Lincoln, Carnegie, were driven by a burning internal force that, when properly directed, became their source of power. This force exists within all of us, but it is gravely misunderstood. The 10th principle of success is sex transmutation. Sexual energy is not just for reproduction. It is the driving force of all creativity, ambition, and genius, but only when harnessed correctly. Most people waste it on indulgence, fleeting pleasures, and meaningless pursuits. But the few who master it, who channel this immense force into their work, their craft, their vision, become unstoppable. A river, when dammed, does not disappear. It is harnessed to generate power. Your sexual energy is the same. When redirected, it sharpens the mind. It intensifies ambition. It is no coincidence that history's greatest minds possessed an intense, almost obsessive drive. They have learned, often later in life, to control their desires rather than be controlled by them. When channeled, this energy elevates your thinking, sharpens your instincts, and gives you access to a higher state of mind. Instead of chasing distractions, channel your energy into creation. Instead of seeking pleasure, seek purpose. Master your sexual energy, and you will unlock a new dimension of power within you. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, and every experience you absorb is stored in a place you cannot see. This nebulous place is your subconscious mind, the silent architect of your reality. The 11th principle of success is mastering the subconscious mind. Millions of people drift through life, painfully unaware of the bridge standing between them and the infinite intelligence of the universe. Every breakthrough, every great invention, every inspired idea first appeared as a thought impulse in the subconscious mind. Yet, instead of harnessing this power, most people unknowingly fill their minds with fear, doubt, and limitations. Then they wonder why success seems impossible. But those who understand the power of the subconscious know that they, as well, have the power to shape it. Imagine your mind as a vast, fertile field. Every thought is a seed. If you plant seeds of fear, doubt, and failure, your subconscious will make them a reality. If you plant seeds of confidence, wealth, and success, your subconscious will nurture them and bring them to life. This is why you must consciously feed your subconscious mind the right ideas. It will accept whatever you give it, whether good or bad. It does not judge, it merely obeys. Guard your mind against negativity. Cultivate it with a burning desire. Feed it with faith, and you will be astounded at the miracles it produces on your behalf. In the early 20th century, as radio technology revolutionized communication, a shocking truth about the human mind was uncovered. Thoughts, much like radio waves, exist as frequencies. And thus, the human brain is not merely a processor of information. It is a transmitter, sending out and receiving ideas through the infinite intelligence of the universe. This is the 12th principle of success: the brain. This idea may seem mystical at first, but how often have you thought of someone, only for them to call or message you moments later? How often have inventors or artists working alone arrived at the same revolutionary ideas at nearly the same time? Gravity, magnetism, electricity. We do not see them, but we use them every day. Thought, too, is one of these unseen forces. When you send thoughts into the world, they create the conditions to realize themselves. And just as a radio cannot tune into every frequency at once, your mind only picks up the thoughts, opportunities, and ideas that match your dominant state of mind. Dwell on doubt and you will attract obstacles. Focus on fear and you will manifest failure. But attune your mind to success, broadcast confidence, determination, and unwavering belief, and you will receive the very opportunities, ideas, and people that will turn your vision into reality. Do not be a passive observer of your life. Choose what you broadcast. You are shaping it with every thought you think. In the depths of the Great Depression, as millions grappled with despair, Napoleon Hill sat alone in his study, surrounded by ghosts only he could see. Night after night, Hill conducted meetings in his mind. He met with Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Carnegie, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and other great men of history. At first, this was an exercise in autosuggestion. He imagined them offering their wisdom, insight, and guidance. But over time, the meetings became real. Hill's ghosts took on personalities of their own. They spoke to him, they advised him, and in the moments that mattered, they informed his intuition. This is the sixth sense, the 13th principle of success.
I fully realize that these guides are the creation of my own imagination. I'm not kidding myself or anybody else about that. But for all practical purposes, they represent real entities and real people, and each one is performing the exact duty that I assigned to it, and is doing it all the time.
Every great leader, every revolutionary thinker, every game-changing inventor has tapped into something beyond conscious reasoning. Some call it intuition, others call it a hunch, a gut feeling, a moment of divine insight. But it is more than just instinct. It is a direct line to infinite intelligence, a channel through which ideas, opportunities, and even forewarnings of danger arrive without logical explanation. The sixth sense is available to all who have mastered the previous principles, who have trained their mind to desire, believe, persist, and act. Train your mind, sharpen your focus, and when the moment comes, listen. You have felt it before, and you can feel it again.
No, I'm not so sure that they're not standing looking over my shoulder now. You know, there are times when I'm sure somebody is standing looking over my shoulder because I say and do things that beyond my reasonable intelligence.
Thank you for watching. This was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. While controversial, it is one of the most popular and most enduring non-fiction books ever written. Perhaps that's for a good reason.
I have been criticized by some who didn't understand the nature of my 10 invisible guides. But the reply is that they serve me perfectly. That's right. I know what it is to be hungry. I know what it is to be without a home. I know what it is to be without friends. I know what it is to be ignorant and illiterate. And I know how difficult it is when you're illiterate and ignorant and poverty-stricken to think in terms of becoming an outstanding philosopher and spreading his influence throughout the world. I know all about that, but I did it. And if I can conquer the things that I've conquered, I know that you can do an equally good job, but you'll have to take possession. You'll have to be the person in charge. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve.